Fashion changes in an instant, but gemstones cannot change with it. And when the world shifts toward new colors, new metals, and new aesthetics, even the most beloved stones can lose their place. Some gemstones in this countdown were once symbols of status. Others dominated entire decades of jewelry design, yet all of them watched their value fall. Not because they lost beauty, but because taste moved somewhere else. One stone here collapsed after becoming too popular. Another faded when warm tones disappeared from fashion. And the gemstone ranked #1 lost more value, more quickly, than almost any gem in modern history. These are the stones that fashion lifted up and quietly left behind. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th, Hematite. When fashion turned away from the industrial look, hematite carries a presence that feels almost industrial, as if shaped not by nature, but by the hands of a world built from steel, machinery, and cold precision. It does not sparkle, it does not glow, and it never competes for attention through brilliance. Instead, it commands attention through weight, color, and an unmistakable sense of solidity. And for a period of time, fashion celebrated that exact energy. During the 1990s, hematite rose quickly as one of the most recognizable stones in contemporary jewelry. The decade embraced an aesthetic rooted in industrial minimalism, sharp lines, metallic tones, and a cool urban intensity. Hematite, with its mirror-like sheen and iron-gray surface, fit perfectly into that world. Designers gravitated to it for its ability to look modern without appearing artificial, bold without relying on color, and luxurious without demanding rarity. Urban fashion adopted hematite as a visual signature. Chunky necklaces, geometric rings, and bold earrings often featured large hematite cabochons or polished beads. Advertisements in fashion magazines used it to convey sophistication with an edge. Jewelry collections from both luxury brands and mainstream retailers embraced the stone, allowing hematite to move through every level of the market. Its value grew not because supply was limited, but because demand was driven by a cultural moment that made the stone feel essential. But trends, no matter how strong, always move. And when the early 2000s arrived, the aesthetic landscape changed dramatically. Where the 1990s admired steel gray tones and industrial weight, the new era favored brightness, lightness, and visual clarity. White gold, platinum, and reflective silvers dominated jewelry counters. Consumers began gravitating toward cleaner colors, gemstones with internal glow, and styles that felt minimal rather than heavy. The very qualities that once made hematite fashionable, the darkness, the weight, the cold metallic hue, became obstacles in a market shifting toward transparency and radiance. As demand contracted, prices softened quickly. Designers phased hematite out of new collections, retailers reduced their inventory, and fashion-forward consumers simply stopped asking for it. Hematite did not change. Fashion did, and the stone's value followed that shift. Today, hematite stands as a reminder of how strongly gemstone markets depend on taste, not just geology. A stone can rise dramatically when its aesthetic aligns with cultural identity and fall just as quickly when trends turn in a different direction. Hematite's decline illustrates a fundamental truth in the gemstone world. Value is never permanent. It is sustained only as long as people desire the look a stone represents. When that desire moves on, even a once iconic gemstone can lose its place almost overnight. Ranked 9th. Smoky Quartz. When dark elegance faded from fashion, Smoky Quartz has always lived in the shadows, both literally and culturally. Its soft brown to charcoal tones once captured the imagination of entire eras. Yet today it stands as one of the clearest examples of how a gemstone's value can fade when fashion's spotlight moves elsewhere. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Smoky Quartz was embraced as a stone of elegance and subtlety. It fit naturally into the Victorian fascination with darker aesthetics. Jewelry from this period leaned towards somber palettes, symbolic colors, and pieces that reflected themes of memory, depth, and emotional weight. Smoky Quartz, with its muted transparency and emotional softness, became a natural choice for brooches, pendants, and mourning jewelry. Its appeal continued well into the Art Nouveau and early Art Deco periods, where smoky, earthy tones appeared in handcrafted pieces and nature-inspired designs. The stone offered designers something quiet but expressive, a gemstone that felt refined without being extravagant. For decades, its value remained steady because its look matched the cultural atmosphere. But fashion's relationship with color is never stable. And when the 1950s arrived, the world embraced a cleaner, brighter, more optimistic palette. Pastel gemstones, vivid sapphires, bold aquamarines, and sparkling diamonds began to dominate jewelry trends. Smoky quartz, once admired for its understated warmth, suddenly looked dull beside the explosion of color that defined mid-century style. The shift accelerated even more sharply in the 1980s and 1990s. High-gloss glamour, white gold settings, and stones that delivered maximum light performance became the standard. Jewelers preferred brilliance and clarity, qualities smoky quartz could not compete with. Even though it remained abundant and easy to source, consumer desire moved toward gems that appeared more radiant, more modern, and more visibly luxurious. As these new tastes solidified, smoky quartz began slipping out of high-end collections. Designers who once used it for mood and subtle contrast replaced it with stones that matched the glossy, high-energy color palettes of contemporary fashion. The stone's market value softened not because it changed, but because the world wanted a different kind of beauty. In today's market, smoky quartz occupies a curious space. It is appreciated by collectors who admire vintage aesthetics, but it no longer commands the attention it once had. Its color, once seen as sophisticated, now competes against decades of marketing that favor brilliance, saturation, and a clean look. And while smoky tones occasionally resurface in niche fashion cycles, they no longer influence mainstream jewelry trends strongly enough to restore the stone's earlier prestige. Smoky quartz illustrates a truth that repeats throughout gemstone history. A stone's value can rise not because it shines the brightest, but because it resonates with the mood of its era. And when the mood changes, even a gemstone with a rich cultural legacy can find itself fading quietly into the background of ranked 8th, Iolite, the blue gem, outpaced by changing color trends. Iolite has long occupied an unusual place in the gemstone world, a stone admired not for rarity, but for the stories that once surrounded it. Often called the Viking's compass, it carried an air of mystery and adventure, and for a time, that narrative allowed it to rise in value far beyond what its color or clarity alone might suggest. But like many gems driven more by fashion and storytelling than scarcity, its place in the market shifted dramatically once trends changed. In the late 20th century, Iolite experienced a quiet but meaningful surge. Jewelry designers began searching for alternatives to sapphires, stones that could offer a blue presence without the price tag. Iolite, with its soft denim blue hue and natural pleochroism, fit perfectly into that creative need. In certain angles, it mimicked the cool tones that consumers found appealing. In others, it shifted toward violet, giving it a personality many found refreshing. Magazines and television shopping networks embraced Iolite as a new discovery, even though the stone had been known for centuries. Marketing framed it as exotic, connected to legends, and ideal for modern fashion pieces. The narrative worked. During this period, Iolite appeared in rings, pendants, and earrings across mainstream retail counters. Its affordability made it accessible. Its color made it feel contemporary. But fashion's love for color is cyclical, and in the early 2000s, the gemstone world experienced a seismic shift with the rising popularity of tanzanite. Tanzanite's electric violet blue shade captured public imagination instantly. It was bold, rare, and heavily marketed as a once-in-a-generation discovery. Consumers gravitated toward its intense saturation, a color that made Iolite's softer blue seem understated by comparison. As tanzanite rose in popularity, Iolite lost its position almost overnight. Jewelers replaced Iolite designs with tanzanite pieces to meet demand. Retailers shifted inventory. Consumers seeking blue stones began expecting more vibrancy, more brilliance, and more visual impact than Iolite could naturally deliver. The stone's value softened sharply, not because it lacked beauty, but because it no longer matched the market's appetite. The decline deepened as fashion trends pushed toward bright, icy, and high-clarity gemstones. The subtle, muted, almost jeans blue quality of Iolite, from once a strength, became a limitation. It didn't fit the high-energy palettes of modern jewelry campaigns, and as tastes evolved toward bold or hyper-clean aesthetics, Iolite's place grew increasingly niche. Today, Iolite is admired by those who appreciate understated elegance, but it no longer occupies a central role in mainstream jewelry design. Its value reflects a gemstone caught between eras, too quiet for the brilliance-driven trends of the present, yet not rare enough to anchor a comeback on its own. The story of Iolite shows how profoundly fashion shapes value. A gemstone can rise simply because the world is in the mood for the color it offers, and fall the moment that mood changes. Iolite did not fade because it lost beauty. It faded because fashion moved to a different shade of blue. Ranked 7th, Tiger's Eye, when bohemian style faded from fashion. Tiger's Eye has always carried a presence that feels alive, its bands of golden light shifting across the surface like a moving flame, once made it one of the most recognizable gemstones in the world. And for a time, its warm, earthy glow wasn't just appreciated, it was fashionable. It matched the colors, textures, and emotions of an era that embraced natural tones and handcrafted design. But as fashion changed, the value of Tiger's Eye changed with it. In the 1960s and 1970s, Tiger's Eye became a symbol of the bohemian movement. Jewelry from this period embraced organic materials, earth-inspired palettes, and a connection to nature. Tiger's Eye matched this aesthetic perfectly, warm, tactile, and visually dynamic, without needing high clarity or precision cutting. It appeared in macrame necklaces, freeform pendants, silver rings, and artisan-made accessories sold everywhere from small craft fairs to major department stores. The stone's popularity surged because it represented the spirit of the time: individual expression, handmade beauty, and a return to natural textures. Its chatoyancy, the cat's eye effect that sweeps across the surface, made each piece feel unique. Tiger's Eye didn't need brilliance to stand out. It needed movement. And movement was exactly what the fashion world wanted. But fashion's relationship with color and texture is always shifting. When the late 1980s and 1990s arrived, aesthetic preferences changed rapidly. Earth tones were replaced by sharper palettes. Instead of warm browns and golds, consumers sought cooler colors: icy blues, crisp whites, bright purples, and highly reflective stones that paired well with white gold and platinum. Jewelry leaned toward clean lines, polished metals, and visual brightness. The warm, rustic tones that once defined Tiger's Eye suddenly felt dated. Designers moved away from bohemian styles, favoring sleek minimalism and gemstones with higher perceived luxury. Tiger's Eye, once embraced for its natural look, now struggled to fit into modern collections. As demand dropped, so did its value. Retailers reduced their inventory. High-end designers stopped showcasing it. The stone became associated with a past decade rather than a current trend. The decline deepened as mass production made Tiger's Eye even more accessible. What once felt artisanal and expressive began appearing in low-cost accessories and souvenir items. The perception shift was subtle but powerful. A gemstone that had once symbolized individuality was now seen as ordinary, abundant, and stylistically outdated. Today, Tiger's Eye remains beloved by collectors who appreciate its character, but it no longer influences fashion or drives mainstream demand. Its visual identity is tied so strongly to a specific era that it struggles to adapt to new trends. And as markets prioritize brilliance, clarity, and bold modern color, Tiger's Eye's warm, striped glow finds itself competing with memories rather than current tastes. Its story illustrates a pattern repeated throughout gemstone history. When a stone becomes a symbol of a particular fashion movement, its value rises with that movement and falls when the world chooses a different look. Ranked 6th, green amethyst. When a pastel trend lost its place in fashion, green amethyst, better known in the trade as Iolite, rose to popularity not because of ancient tradition or historical prestige, but because of a modern fashion moment that briefly turned it into a desirable gemstone. Its soft mint green color felt fresh, contemporary, and unlike anything commonly seen in mainstream jewelry at the time. For a short period, this pastel shade aligned perfectly with the visual language of modern design. And that alignment allowed Iolite to climb in value quickly before fashion moved on and left it behind. In the early 2000s, jewelry trends leaned towards subtle colors that conveyed calmness and simplicity. Consumers preferred soft greens, lavender tones, and lightly saturated gems that felt refined rather than loud. Iolite fit this aesthetic effortlessly. Its gentle green tone, neither too bright nor too deep, paired well with sterling silver, white gold, and minimalist settings that dominated catalogs and boutique displays. Designers embraced Iolite as a stone of modern elegance. It appeared in cushion-cut rings, elongated pendants, halo earrings, and contemporary bracelets. Shopping networks and retail brands often marketed it as an exclusive discovery, highlighting its unusual color and aligning it with the rise of pastel-themed fashion lines. For a moment, Iolite looked ready to establish itself as a major gemstone category. But much of this momentum depended on perception. Perception that Iolite was scarce, new, and naturally green. As awareness grew, consumers learned what the industry had long known. Most Iolite on the market is not found naturally in its green state. Instead, it is produced by heating certain types of amethyst to achieve that soft green color. While the treatment is considered stable and acceptable, it changed how buyers valued the stone. The sense of rarity weakened, and in the gemstone world, perception of rarity influences price more than almost anything else. At the same time, fashion trends shifted yet again. The rise of clean luxury pushed consumers toward brighter greens, stones like peridot, savorit garnet, and green tourmaline. These gems offered richer saturation and higher brilliance, making Iolite's pale tones seem washed out by comparison. Jewelry marketing began emphasizing vivid colors, crisp sparkle, and stones that photographed well under bright lighting. Iolite, subtle by nature, struggled to maintain visibility in this new environment. Its decline was accelerated by mass availability. As treated material became more common, Iolite appeared in inexpensive designs and fast fashion accessories. The gemstone that once stood for modern sophistication gradually became associated with budget jewelry. And once a stone becomes linked to low-cost production, its perceived value rarely recovers. Today, Iolite still appeals to those who love soft, muted colors, but it no longer commands strong pricing or widespread demand. Its journey shows how quickly a gemstone's value can rise when it aligns with a cultural mood, and how quickly it can fall when fashion favors a different shade of green. Iolite is a reminder that in the modern market, style can elevate a stone just as quickly as it can diminish it. Ranked 5th, Kunzite. When pastel fashion faded and value fell. Kunzite has always possessed a delicate kind of beauty, soft, romantic, and almost weightless in its pale lavender glow. For decades, that subtle charm allowed it to rise through the fashion world with surprising speed. Its appeal was never rooted in rarity or ancient history. Instead, it became valuable because its color aligned perfectly with a specific aesthetic era. And when that aesthetic faded, so did the stone's place in the market. Discovered in the early 20th century and named after famed gemologist George Frederick Kunz, Kunzite spent years as a quiet presence in jewelry. It was admired but not widely used. That changed dramatically in the 1980s and early 1990s, when pastel fashion swept across clothing, makeup, and accessories. Soft pinks, lavender hues, and airy color palettes dominated runways and magazine covers. Designers searched for gemstones that reflected this gentle vibrancy, and Kunzite stepped into the spotlight. Its color, ranging from blush rose to lilac, matched the decade's pastel identity so well that Kunzite became almost synonymous with feminine elegance. High-end brands incorporated it into cocktail rings, pendant necklaces, and evening jewelry, and television shopping networks promoted it as an exciting, fresh alternative to traditional pink stones. Consumers loved its softness, and the stone's value grew as demand rose. Yet beneath its popularity, Kunzite carried vulnerabilities the market often overlooked. The stone's color is highly light-sensitive. Prolonged exposure to sunlight can cause it to fade, sometimes significantly. Jewelers understood this. Consumers often did not. As awareness of the issue spread, the stone's perceived durability weakened. Shoppers who once admired its pastel glow began questioning its longevity. At the same time, fashion trends evolved once again. By the 2000s, jewelry aesthetics shifted toward more vivid and saturated colors. Bright pink tourmaline, hot pink sapphires, and neon rubelites. The romantic lavender tones that once felt modern now appeared muted beside the boldness preferred by a new generation of buyers. Kunzite's softness, once its greatest advantage, became a stylistic limitation. This shift was amplified by changing consumer habits. Social media and digital advertising favored gemstones that photographed well, brilliant, intense colors that captured attention instantly. Kunzite, subtle by nature, often appeared washed out in comparison. Retailers reduced inventory. Designers replaced it with stones that delivered stronger visual impact. Mass-market production further accelerated the stone's decline. As more treated or lower-quality material entered the market, the distinction between fine kunzite and commercial-grade pieces blurred. Prices fell. Prestige slipped. A gemstone once celebrated for embodying an entire fashion palette was now associated with outdated trends and inconsistent quality. Today, kunzite remains admired by collectors who appreciate its gentle beauty, but it no longer commands the influence or value it once held. Its story reflects a truth woven throughout gemstone history. When a stone's identity becomes tied too closely to a temporary fashion movement, its rise can be swift, and it's ranked fourth. Onyx. When Art Deco fell, and its value fell with it. Onyx has always carried a sense of mystery. Its deep black surface, polished to a mirror-like shine, once symbolized elegance, power, and modern sophistication. There was a time when onyx dominated jewelry counters and defined entire design movements. Yet today, its value sits far below the heights it once reached, an unmistakable sign of how profoundly fashion can reshape the worth of a gemstone. In the early 20th century, onyx played a central role in both Art Nouveau and Art Deco jewelry. Designers embraced stark contrasts, geometric shapes, and strong visual lines. Black onyx, paired with diamonds, platinum, or crisp white enamel, created the bold graphic style that defined the era. Its color wasn't just beautiful, it was architectural. It carried the drama and formality that Art Deco demanded. During this period, onyx became one of the most sought-after gemstones for high-end pieces. Brooches, cigarette cases, cocktail rings, and cufflinks frequently showcased the stone. Its versatility made it equally appealing for men's and women's jewelry. The value of onyx rose not because it was geologically rare, but because it was stylistically essential. Fashion gave it purpose, and purpose gave it value. But as the decades moved forward, taste shifted. After World War II, jewelry design softened. Pastels rose in popularity, yellow gold returned, and consumers gravitated toward warmer, more optimistic aesthetics. Bright gemstones, sapphires, aquamarines, citrines, amethysts, began to dominate the market. The stark, dramatic look that had once defined onyx now felt too formal, too heavy, too tied to an older generation style. The decline accelerated in the 1970s and 1980s, when black gemstones briefly resurfaced in avant-garde fashion, but could not reclaim the prestige of their Art Deco peak. By the time the 2000s arrived, the market favored high brilliance, light-filled stones, and materials that photographed well under modern lighting. Onyx, opaque by nature, struggled to compete with the sparkle consumers now expected. Modern jewelry marketing unintentionally pushed it even further aside. Black jewelry became associated with mass-produced pieces, stainless steel accessories, and inexpensive men's fashion items. As a result, onyx, once a cornerstone of luxury design, became linked with affordability. When a stone becomes visually tied to low-cost production, its perceived value inevitably drops. Yet onyx's decline was not driven by durability or availability. It was driven by aesthetics. Fashion embraced brightness, transparency, and color. Black onyx, grounded in bold lines and heavy contrasts, belonged to a different artistic era. And as that era faded, so did the stone's place in mainstream jewelry. Today, onyx still appears in vintage styles and minimalist pieces, but it no longer shapes trends or commands high prices. Its journey reflects a deeper truth. When a gemstone becomes the face of a specific design movement, its value becomes dependent on the survival of that movement. For Onyx, the fall of Art Deco didn't just close a chapter in jewelry history. It closed the chapter of its peak value. Ranked third, amber. When warm earth tones fell out of fashion. Amber has always stood apart from traditional gemstones. Formed not from minerals but from ancient resin, it carries a warmth and organic softness that once made it one of the most beloved materials in jewelry history. Its honey-colored glow, soft transparency, and ability to trap fragments of ancient life fascinated cultures for thousands of years. But while its story is timeless, its value has not been. Amber's decline is one of the most striking examples of how shifting fashion preferences can completely reshape the market for a gemstone. For centuries, amber symbolized natural beauty and quiet luxury. It dominated regions across Europe, especially in the Baltic states, where it was carved, polished, traded, and worn by royalty and nobility. Its appeal lay in its warmth, literally and visually. Unlike cold minerals, amber felt lightweight and inviting, with a color range that resembled sunlight suspended in stone. In the 1960s and 1970s, amber experienced a major revival. Earth tones became a defining feature of the Bohemian era. Warm browns, golds, and amber-like hues appeared in clothing, accessories, and home decor. Amber jewelry fit perfectly into this wave. Large beads, sculpted pendants, and polished cabochons became staples of artisan markets and boutique stores. The stone's gentle radiance embodied the natural, handmade aesthetic that defined the decade. Demand rose sharply, and with it, market value. But as fashion moved forward, styles changed. When the 1980s and 1990s embraced sharper, brighter, more modern aesthetics, amber's muted warmth no longer aligned with mainstream taste. Consumers gravitated toward gemstones that offered crisp brilliance, stones such as aquamarine, topaz, and sapphire. Jewelry trends leaned toward high-polished metals, geometric cuts, and cool-tone palettes. Amber's organic softness struggled to find a place in this new visual world. The decline intensified in the 2000s when minimalism and clean luxury gained momentum. Modern buyers preferred transparency, icy colors, or monochromatic tones that photographed well under bright lighting. Amber, warm, cloudy, and sometimes containing inclusions, felt stylistically dated. Its golden hues, once admired, appeared old-fashioned compared to the contemporary preference for neutrality and understated elegance. Another factor accelerated its fall: mass production. Large quantities of amber and amber-like substitutes entered the global market. As the stone became more common in low-cost accessories and souvenir shops, its prestige eroded. What had once been an artisanal material associated with cultural heritage became linked to inexpensive jewelry. Perception shifted, and perception drives value. Today, amber remains treasured by collectors who understand its geological and historical importance. Yet it rarely commands strong prices in mainstream jewelry markets. Its identity is tied so closely to past eras that it struggles to adapt to modern trends. And because its warmth contrasts sharply with today's cooler, cleaner aesthetic, its value continues to reflect the gap between nostalgia and current fashion. Amber's story demonstrates a central truth in gemstone history. A stone can shine for centuries, but its market value depends on how well its beauty aligns with the era's taste. When fashion turns toward different colors, different textures, or a different emotional tone, even a gemstone with ancient prestige can lose its place. Ranked second, citrine. When 1970s warm tones disappeared from fashion, citrine has long carried the warmth of sunlight, golden, cheerful, and unmistakably inviting. For decades, that brightness made it one of the most popular gemstones in the world. Its vibrant color captured attention instantly, and its affordability made it accessible across every level of the jewelry market. But citrine's rise was tied closely to a specific fashion identity, and when that identity faded, its value shifted dramatically. In the 1970s, citrine became a defining gemstone of the era. The decade was saturated with warm palettes, burnt orange, golden yellow, deep brown, and honeyed amber tones. Jewelry design followed suit. Yellow gold surged in popularity, and citrine's sunny glow blended seamlessly into this aesthetic. Designers featured it in oversized rings, bold pendants, cocktail jewelry, and freeform artisan pieces. Its color wasn't just admired, it symbolized the confident, expressive style of the time. Citrine's accessibility also played a role in its success. Because it could be sourced in large sizes and cut into dramatic shapes, the stone became a favorite for statement jewelry. And since its price remained within reach for many consumers, it quickly gained widespread appeal. In this period, citrine was viewed as both fashionable and abundant, a rare combination that helped elevate its status. However, fashion trends are rarely stable. Entering the 1980s and especially the 1990s, the jewelry market began pivoting toward cooler tones. White gold replaced yellow gold. Pastels, icy blues, crisp purples, and bright whites became the new standard. Brilliance and high clarity were prioritized, and gemstones that sparkled under strong lighting rose to prominence. Citrine, inherently warm and often lightly included, no longer matched the emerging aesthetic. Its decline became more pronounced in the 2000s as minimalist jewelry took hold. Consumers gravitated toward diamonds, aquamarine, and pale topaz, stones that offered a clean, airy look. Citrine's golden hue, once beloved, seemed bold in comparison to the new preference for subtlety. Retailers adjusted inventory accordingly. Designers reduced citrine offerings, and as visibility dropped, so did demand. Another factor affected perception: the market's understanding of heat treatment. Most citrine available today is created by heating amethyst or smoky quartz. While the treatment is stable and industry accepted, it changed how buyers viewed the stone. What once felt like a natural burst of sunlight became associated with affordable, mass-produced jewelry. And once a gemstone becomes linked to high-volume, low-cost manufacturing, its prestige and price rarely recover. Today, citrine remains appreciated by those who love its joyful color, but it no longer shapes mainstream jewelry trends. Its identity is tied so closely to the aesthetic of 1970s fashion that it struggles to fit into modern palettes dominated by cooler tones and understated luxury. Its journey reflects one of the clearest cases of value shaped and reshaped by shifting taste. Citrine's story shows how a gemstone can rise not through rarity, but through perfect alignment with the mood of an era. And when that mood changes, value follows. Its brightness never dimmed. Fashion simply turned toward a different kind of light. In first place, blue topaz, when the world's favorite blue became too common. Blue topaz holds a unique position in the gemstone world, one almost no other stone can claim. It rose higher, spread wider, and became more popular than nearly any gem of its time. And because of that, its fall is considered one of the most dramatic value drops ever linked not to geology, not to rarity, but purely to shifting fashion. In the mid to late 20th century, blue topaz became the signature gemstone of modern jewelry design. Its icy crystal clear blue captured the mood of an era obsessed with freshness, brightness, and clean color. Jewelers leaned heavily into the trend. Advertisements showcased it as the new blue, a stone that offered the look of aquamarine and the clarity of blue zircon at a fraction of the price. It sparkled under retail lighting, photographed beautifully in catalogs, and delivered visual impact even in small sizes. Consumers embraced it instantly. Blue topaz rings, pendants, and earrings became staples across the United States. For a time, it was not just fashionable, it was dominant. Its presence in the market was so strong that entire jewelry collections were built around it. Every holiday season, every department store counter, every television shopping network featured it as the accessible gemstone of choice. But the success that made blue topaz a phenomenon also planted the seeds of its decline. As production scaled, treated blue topaz entered the market in massive quantities. The once fresh color became familiar, then common, then oversaturated. What had once looked luxurious became associated with mass-market jewelry. Designers who once used it to create a modern aesthetic shifted their attention elsewhere. searching for gemstones that still carried a sense of uniqueness. Then fashion changed. The 2000s and 2010s marked a pivot toward deeper, richer, more complex blues. Tanzanite surged. Salon sapphires resurged in luxury markets. Even mid-range consumers gravitated toward darker tones like London blue topaz or gems with stronger saturation. The crisp sky blue tone that had once felt innovative now seemed too simple, too bright, too uniform to match evolving taste. Modern aesthetics favored depth, not clarity, nuance, not uniformity, rarity, not mass availability. Blue topaz could not follow that shift. As demand declined, supply continued to flow, creating a widening gap between availability and desire. Prices softened, prestige evaporated. A gemstone that once symbolized modern luxury became, in the eyes of many consumers, a reminder of an outdated era in fashion jewelry. Today, blue topaz still holds sentimental value and remains a beautiful gemstone. But its role in the market is no longer defined by aspiration. It is defined by abundance. Its fall stands as the clearest example in the gemstone industry of a powerful truth. When fashion changes, the value of even the most beloved gemstone can collapse, not because the stone lost beauty, but because the world stopped wanting the color it offered. Blue topaz did not fall quietly. It fell from the top, proving why it is remembered as the king of fashion-driven declines. In the end, every gemstone in this countdown revealed the same truth. Beauty alone is never enough to preserve value. When fashion shifts, when culture changes direction, even the most cherished stones can lose their place. Some faded because new colors defined a new era. Some were overshadowed by brilliance the world preferred, and some simply became too familiar to feel special any longer. Yet none of these stones lost their story. Their histories remain, their colors endure, and their significance continues for those who still see meaning in them. But in the world of jewelry, where taste moves faster than time, value belongs not only to the earth that formed a gemstone, but to the era willing to treasure it. Another chapter of gemstone history closes here, and another begins with every shift in what the world chooses to admire next.